What if you discovered that living without a fixed purpose could be more liberating than having all the answers? There's a silent restlessness that accompanies so many people today. A feeling that, even when doing everything right, something essential is missing. As if we were living someone else's life, following a script we never consciously chose. Maybe you've felt this before. That exhaustion that doesn't improve with rest. That uncomfortable question that arises in moments of silence. Is this all there is? If you're here, it's likely that part of you is asking for a pause in this relentless race to nowhere. Today, we're going to explore an idea that might sound strange, but that holds ancient wisdom. The art of being useless in a world that only values measurable results. When we observe a seed sprouting in the earth, it has no guarantees of anything. There's no certainty of enough rain, the right amount of sun, or fertile soil. It simply trusts the invisible process and grows, cell by cell, day after day, without questioning whether it's producing enough. This natural confidence exists within you too, but it's been systematically covered by layers of fear and the need for control that our society proudly calls maturity or responsibility. Our culture has taught us that trusting is dangerous, naive, irresponsible, that we need to always be vigilant, always prepared for the worst possible scenario. But observe your own experience with honesty. The moments when you felt most alive, most connected to yourself and to others, were exactly those when you allowed yourself to relax into that natural trust that has existed within you all along. There's a fundamental difference between wise prudence and obsessive control that dominates modern life. Prudence is like an experienced navigator who knows the winds and currents, but still surrenders completely to the journey, knowing that the ocean will always be bigger than their maps. Obsessive control is like someone trying to tie down all future possibilities, predict all outcomes, eliminate any chance of surprise, pain, or failure. Life is not a machine you can program with precision. It's much more like a powerful river that flows. You can learn to navigate its currents, to read its movements, to work with its force, but you'll never be able to control it completely. And when you try to do that, you end up losing exactly what makes the journey valuable: genuine spontaneity, unexpected discovery, the adventure of not knowing exactly what's coming next. Your own inner nature operates with this same organic wisdom we see functioning throughout all of nature. Your heart beats approximately 100,000 times per day without you having to remind it even once. Wounds heal through complex biochemical processes that your conscious mind can't even comprehend, much less direct or optimize. You digest food, filter toxins, regenerate cells, consolidate memories, dream, create neural connections. All of this happens through an intelligence that functions far beyond the reach of your consciousness. And that is infinitely wiser and more reliable than any control system you could invent. This natural intelligence deserves your deep trust. It has kept you alive and functioning since the first second of your existence. It has navigated you through emotional crises, physical changes, devastating losses, and unexpected joys that your conscious mind could never have planned or controlled. So why is it so hard to trust this wisdom that has already proven its effectiveness millions of times? Why is our first impulse in the face of uncertainty always to try to control, micromanage, obsessively plan every possible variable? The answer lies in a painful psychological truth that most people prefer to avoid. The fear of trusting leads us directly to compulsive control. And compulsive control inevitably leads us to the deepest and most persistent loneliness. Observe your own experience without judgment. When you don't trust the people around you, you end up needing to do everything alone, carry all the responsibilities, make all the decisions. When you don't trust yourself, you need to question every choice to mental exhaustion, seek external validation for every move, create increasingly complex systems of verification and re-verification. When you don't trust life itself, this mysterious and intelligent process that's always happening, you need to build increasingly elaborate fortresses of protection, prediction, and control. You need to have a plan for every situation, an answer for every question, a solution for every problem before it even appears. In the end, even surrounded by all this security that you've meticulously built, you feel profoundly isolated, chronically tired, disconnected not only from others, but from yourself. The cruel irony is that, trying to protect yourself from any possibility of pain or failure, you end up creating a much more subtle and persistent form of suffering. sensitive and introspective people know this trap intimately. Precisely because they feel so much, because they perceive emotional nuances that others don't pick up on, because they have a natural capacity for deep empathy, they often develop an almost compulsive need to protect themselves preventively. They create increasingly rigid internal rules about what's safe to feel, what's socially acceptable to express, how they should behave to avoid any possibility of rejection, criticism, or abandonment. But this constant emotional vigilance has a devastating cost that we rarely recognize consciously. It slowly kills spontaneity, that wonderful capacity to genuinely react to what's happening in the moment. It transforms every social interaction into a carefully calculated performance instead of an authentic encounter between human beings. It transforms every moment of joy into an anxious worry about how long it will last. Chronic guilt and obsessive perfectionism are direct children of this fundamental distrust. When you don't trust that you're fundamentally worthy of love and acceptance exactly as you are, with your contradictions, limitations, and human imperfections, you need to try to earn that acceptance through constant and flawless performance. You need to always be useful to someone, always productive at something, always available for others' needs. You can't relax completely because relaxing means risking not being necessary, and not being necessary means risking being forgotten or abandoned. And here we arrive at something even more subtle and invasive. We live in a society that literally trains our thoughts to function as sophisticated internal surveillance systems that operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without pause, without break, without compassion. From very early on, through a powerful combination of formal education, family pressure, omnipresent media, and cultural expectations, we learn that even our most intimate and spontaneous feelings need to go through a rigorous approval process before being considered valid, appropriate, or worthy of expression. This culture of internalized self-censorship is much deeper and more devastating than it appears at first glance. It's not just about moderating what we say in public or adjusting our behavior in specific social situations. It's about censoring our own thoughts before they even fully form in consciousness. It's about feeling automatic guilt for feeling anger when someone disrespects us, for feeling sadness when we lose something important, for feeling fear when facing the unknown, for feeling anything that isn't immediately classified as positive, productive, or socially convenient. Have you ever noticed how completely exhausting it is to constantly try to control and judge the natural flow of thoughts that passes through your head? How impossible it is to truly relax when there's always a part of you functioning as an internal judge, evaluating whether your thoughts, feelings, and reactions are sufficiently correct. This perpetual internal vigilance is one of the main causes of chronic emotional burnout that so many people experience today, but that they rarely can identify or name clearly, because when you're constantly policing your own internal experience, you can never really rest, never genuinely relax, never simply be yourself without conditions. Current culture deliberately pushes everyone toward this form of self-censorship because people who are genuinely present and connected to themselves are naturally less controllable, less manipulable by external systems, less dependent on constant validation and approval from others. A person who genuinely trusts their own internal experience doesn't need others' opinions to know if they're doing well in life. They don't buy unnecessary products to impress people they don't even know well. They don't accept jobs that destroy their health just to prove their worth to a system that will never fully recognize them anyway. And this brings us to a very concrete and visible manifestation of this entire control system, what we can call the existential bureaucracy of modern life that systematically and progressively distances us from the real, direct, and immediate sense of simply existing as human beings. Look around you carefully for a few minutes. Practically everything you do during the day needs to be somehow registered, categorized, measured, documented, optimized, or approved by some external system. Even universities, which should theoretically be temples of free knowledge and creative discovery, have become efficient mass production factories where getting the diploma is infinitely more important than genuinely learning something, where passing the test is worth more than actually understanding the material, where accumulating credits is more relevant than developing wisdom, where following the pre-established curriculum is safer than exploring your own curiosities and intellectual passions. This systematic cultural obsession with documenting, measuring, and controlling every small aspect of human experience has slowly killed our natural capacity to simply live without agenda, without objective, without needing to justify or optimize every moment. How many people do you know who literally can't do anything anymore? Eat a meal, visit a new place, spend time with friends, without immediately documenting the experience on their phone? Who can't be present to what's happening because they're always mentally composing the caption for the post they'll make later? The daily life of many people has literally become an endless series of optimized and timed checklists. Wake up, but with the right app that monitors sleep cycles. Have breakfast, but only the correct type that supposedly increases productivity. Exercise, but meticulously recording every calorie burned, every heartbeat, every possible metric. Work, but religiously hitting all the established KPIs and performance metrics. Relax, but only after having earned it through measurable productivity. Sleep, but strictly following the scientifically optimized nighttime routine to maximize recovery. Where's the real, spontaneous, unpredictable, genuinely satisfying life in the midst of so much systematic organization and constant self-monitoring? Where is the direct and simple pleasure, the non-measurable satisfaction, the joy that doesn't need to be justified or documented? Many people feel, without being able to clearly articulate what they're feeling, that they're just mechanically surviving amid these infinite and growing demands. That they've completely lost touch with what really matters to them as unique human beings. That they're always busy doing thousands of things, but never really living in a full and satisfying way. Always producing measurable results, but never really creating something that has deep personal meaning. Always moving frantically from one task to another, but never really arriving anywhere that's genuinely worthwhile. The generalized cultural obsession with productivity, performance, and quantifiable results has created an entire generation that knows a lot about technical efficiency and very little about genuine existential satisfaction. That can optimize any process, but has completely lost the ability to feel deep and lasting pleasure in the simplest and most fundamental things in life. This leads us directly to one of the biggest invisible dangers of modern life. When work, in the broadest and most invasive sense of the word, literally becomes the only real and socially recognized purpose for existing as a human being. And I'm not just talking about the formal 9-to-5 job, but about this totalizing mentality that transforms absolutely every aspect of your life into a strategic tool to achieve some future goal, some improvement, or growth, or personal optimization target. You know that deep and persistent exhaustion that doesn't get better even with extended vacations or with restful weekends? That tiredness that seems to come from a place much deeper than the physical body, that persists even when you're theoretically relaxing, that sometimes even gets worse when you stop keeping yourself constantly busy. It comes exactly from living based exclusively on practical and measurable utility, from transforming your own existence as a human being into an increasingly sophisticated and efficient machine, but completely devoid of soul, direct pleasure, meaning that doesn't need to be constantly justified to external audiences. When you live exclusively to work and achieve goals, even if they're apparently noble goals, like personal growth, social contribution, or helping other people, something fundamental and precious within you begins to die silently, almost imperceptibly. It doesn't matter how much external success you accumulate, how much social recognition you receive, how many important objectives you manage to achieve. There's always a persistent and uncomfortable feeling of existential emptiness, as if you were missing something absolutely essential that you can't even name or locate clearly. There's an abysmal difference, which our culture works hard to obscure, between technical productivity and genuine sense of existence. You can be extraordinarily productive according to all external criteria, fulfilling all your obligations, achieving all your goals, being recognized by others as an obviously successful person, and still wake up every morning with an uncomfortable question persistently whispering in the back of consciousness. Is this all there is? Is this really what I'm here for? Is this what it means to be alive? That part of you that feels chronically empty even when everything seems to be working perfectly, according to social standards, isn't being neurotic, ungrateful, or too demanding. It's trying to awaken you to a fundamental truth about human nature. There's much more richness, depth, and satisfaction available in the experience of being alive than just being constantly useful for something or someone. Living only to be useful is an extremely limited, impoverishing, and ultimately unsustainable way to exist as a complete human being. It's as if you were a sophisticated tool that completely forgot that you're also a conscious being capable of contemplation, enchantment, experiences that don't lead anywhere specific but that are infinitely precious exactly because of that. And it's here that we arrive at something that might sound completely strange, even subversive, in our current culture. The absolutely vital importance, for the integral health of the human soul, of regularly and deliberately studying the apparently useless. Of consciously and without guilt dedicating yourself to things that serve no practical or measurable purpose, that generate no quantifiable result, that don't improve your personal or professional performance in anything that could be documented on a resume. When was the last time you read a poem just for the pure and inexplicable pleasure of encountering words organized in a beautiful and surprising way? When was the last time you observed clouds slowly changing shape in the sky without being minimally worried about the weather forecast or how much time you were wasting? When was the last time you listened to music? Really listened, with complete attention and total availability, without doing absolutely any other activity at the same time, without trying to extract any motivational lesson or insight for personal growth? These moments of apparent time wasting are actually absolutely fundamental for maintaining the health, integrity, and vitality of your soul as a complete human being. They're like essential vitamins for a dimension of you that can't be nourished through external achievements, measurable results, or demonstrable practical utility. The modern educational system has conditioned us profoundly and systematically to believe that literally everything needs to have immediate and provable practical application. That art is automatically less important than mathematics. That philosophy is inherently less valuable than business administration. That contemplation is obviously less useful than measurable productive action. But your soul, that deeper, more essential and more mysterious dimension of who you really are, asks for exactly the opposite. Regular and protected space for the non-functional, for the playful, for the contemplative, for what exists only for the pure and inexplicable pleasure of existing. Poetry won't solve your concrete financial problems, but it can touch and heal places within you that money can't even locate, much less reach. Music won't increase your measurable professional productivity, but it can dissolve emotional tensions and restore an internal harmony that no personal optimization method can create artificially. Philosophy won't give you practical and applicable answers to the logistical challenges of daily life, but it can connect you with questions so deep and transformative that they completely change how you see life, others, death, time, meaning, and especially yourself. Allowing yourself to study, contemplate, and regularly dedicate yourself to the apparently useless is not an optional luxury for privileged people who have time left over or who don't have real responsibilities in the world. It's a basic and non-negotiable necessity of any human being who wants to maintain genuine contact with their essential humanity. It's a concrete way of regularly remembering that you exist far beyond your specific social function, far beyond your measurable productivity, far beyond everything you offer or produce for other people or systems. And this brings us directly to the pulsing heart of this entire conversation: the subtle, profound, and potentially revolutionary art of being genuinely useless in a world completely obsessed with quantifiable utility and constant productivity. It's absolutely crucial to understand from the beginning that being useless, in the liberating sense we're exploring here, has absolutely nothing to do with being lazy, irresponsible, unproductive, or failed according to conventional standards. It doesn't mean neglecting your real responsibilities, abandoning your important commitments, or not contributing in any way to the world around you. What it means is something infinitely more subtle and potentially transformative: giving yourself the fundamental and inalienable right to exist without needing to constantly justify each breath, each moment, each experience with a grandiose purpose, demonstrable utility, or measurable result. It means recognizing and deeply honoring the fact that you have intrinsic, inherent, unconditional value that doesn't depend minimally on what you produce, what you offer, what you achieve, or how you become useful to other people, institutions, or systems. There's ancient wisdom, almost forgotten in our culture, in simply not doing anything from time to time. In sitting in a public square and observing people passing by without trying to extract any lesson about human behavior or social dynamics. In lying on the grass in a park and looking at clouds without trying to see recognizable shapes or animals in their ever-changing configurations, in taking a really long bath just for the direct sensory pleasure of feeling warm water on your skin, without being mentally organizing the rest of the day, planning future conversations, or solving pending problems. When you genuinely allow yourself these moments without the slightest shadow of guilt, without the persistent feeling that you should be doing something more important or more productive, something almost miraculous begins to happen gradually. A part of you that was perpetually contracted, a muscular and emotional tension so constant that you didn't even notice it was there anymore, finally has explicit permission to relax completely. A part that was always running mentally, always striving to get to some future place, always directing itself towards some specific objective, can finally simply stop and be present to what's happening now. Imagine just for a few minutes what it would be like to wake up on any morning and, instead of your mind already automatically organizing and categorizing all the tasks, commitments, and responsibilities of the day that's beginning, you could simply feel the pure physical and emotional experience of gradually waking up. The natural and spontaneous stretching of the body. The progressive clarity of consciousness emerging from the world of dreams. The smooth and organic transition between different states of being, without hurry, without agenda, without needing to optimize or accelerate the process. What would it be like to have your morning coffee really paying attention to the complex and unique flavor, the comforting warmth, the aroma rising from the cup, without being mentally already present at the 9 o'clock meeting, the project you need to deliver, the people you need to respond to? What would it be like to look out your house window and really see what's there? The specific trees with their unique shapes, the sky with its particular color and texture at this moment, the birds with their characteristic movements, the specific quality of light on this day, instead of just quickly checking whether it's raining or sunny? These moments of apparent uselessness are actually moments of greatest real presence, of greatest genuine connection with direct and immediate life, of greatest proximity to who you really are when you're not trying to be anything specific for anyone. They're the moments when you're most alive in the deepest and most complete sense of the word, most connected to yourself and to the immediate reality around you, most available to receive the subtle gifts that life is constantly offering, but that we rarely have enough presence to perceive. The true art lies in learning to consciously protect these precious moments from the automatic and conditioned guilt that our culture has programmed you to feel whenever you're not being visibly productive or useful for something. In not allowing the conditioned internal voice, the one that constantly murmurs things like, "You should be doing something more important. This is a waste of time. Responsible people don't do this," to completely destroy the simple, direct, and deeply satisfying experience of being alive and conscious. In recognizing that these moments are at least as valuable as any professional achievement, any goal reached, any external recognition you might receive, maybe even more valuable, because they're what constantly remind you of who you really are underneath all the social roles, all the responsibilities, all the identities and masks you use to navigate the world. Our culture has achieved the impressive feat of transforming even leisure into disguised work, even rest into personal optimization strategy, even pleasure into development and growth tools. But there's a fundamental difference, which might seem subtle in theory, but which in direct experience is absolutely revolutionary. The difference between playing strategically to develop useful skills and playing for the pure, inexplicable pleasure of playing, without agenda, without objective, without needing it to lead anywhere specific. Between relaxing calculatedly to be more productive later and relaxing for the simple pleasure of relaxing, without timer, without guilt, without expectation of return on investment. Between contemplating in hopes of finding useful answers or applicable insights and contemplating for the pure pleasure of contemplating, without needing it to result in anything beyond the experience of contemplation itself. Genuine play, authentic lightness, purposeless pause, laughter that arises spontaneously without specific reason. These experiences that our culture systematically considers waste of time are actually absolutely fundamental for a balanced, healthy, and deeply satisfying life. They connect us with a dimension of ourselves that isn't always calculating future advantages, always planning the next strategic move, always striving to get to some supposedly better place in the future. A dimension that simply is, that simply exists, that simply rejoices in the basic and miraculous fact of being alive and conscious in this specific moment. Truly resting is not a prize you earn after having worked hard enough to deserve it. It's a basic, fundamental, and non-negotiable necessity of any healthy human being. Contemplating is not a luxury for people who can afford not to be constantly productive. It's essential food for the soul. Perhaps one of the most important things we need to consciously unlearn is this deeply internalized cultural compulsion to try to extract utility, benefit, or strategic advantage from absolutely everything we experience. To automatically transform every experience into a tool to achieve some future goal. Every relationship into a networking opportunity. Every hobby into a possible source of additional income. Every moment of peace into an optimized productivity strategy. We've been systematically and deliberately conditioned, through formal education, omnipresent media, constant social pressure, to look at literally everything through the narrow and impoverishing lens of immediate and measurable utility. What's this for? How can this benefit me? What advantage can I extract from this? How can I monetize this experience? It's a way of seeing and interacting with the world that might seem intelligent, strategic, and efficient on the surface, but that actually distances us deeply and tragically from the ability to simply appreciate things as they are, for what they are, without needing to transform them into something else. There's immense, almost sacred beauty in what serves no specific or measurable purpose. In conversation that doesn't lead anywhere useful, but that nourishes the soul in ways you can't even explain or quantify. In the walk without destination that renews your vital energy in ways that no optimized exercise can replicate. In music you listen to just for the pure and inexplicable pleasure of listening, without trying to extract any motivational lesson, insight for personal growth, or demonstrable practical benefit. In the book you read without the slightest intention of applying anything you learn, just for the direct pleasure of encountering interesting ideas, organized in beautiful sentences. When you consciously stop trying to take strategic advantage of absolutely everything, something truly miraculous begins to happen in your experience. You begin to receive gifts from life that you didn't even know existed. Perceptions, insights, and connections begin to appear that only emerge when you genuinely aren't looking for them, aren't trying to force them, aren't expecting them to appear. An existential lightness is born, a genuine spontaneity, a capacity for surprise and enchantment that only comes when you stop carrying life as if it were a personal project that needs to be constantly optimized and perfected. Eastern philosophies have known and explored this for literally thousands of years, but our Western culture is just beginning to timidly rediscover purposelessness. It's a fascinating English word that doesn't have direct translation to Portuguese, but that evokes something like the art of existing without fixed purpose, or the wisdom of being present without specific agenda. And it might be exactly the secret to a lighter, more fluid, and more deeply satisfying life that you were looking for without knowing. Purposelessness doesn't mean at all not having general direction in life, not caring about anything important, or living in a completely passive and apathetic way in the face of circumstances. What it means is something infinitely more subtle and potentially transformative. It means being genuinely open to life, taking you where it naturally wants to take you. Trusting deeply that you don't need to have everything planned, controlled, and predetermined to be on the right path. Accepting with curiosity and even enthusiasm that some of the best and most transformative experiences that will happen in your life haven't even passed through your conscious imagination yet. In Zen Buddhism, there's an expression that captures this with poetic elegance. Let things follow their natural course. Wu Wei in Chinese Taoist philosophy, literally, action without action, or the art of acting without forcing. These contemplative traditions understood something that our Western culture, with its obsession with control and quantifiable results, has almost completely forgotten. Not everything needs to have a clear and articulated reason to exist. Not every action needs to have a specific and measurable objective. Not every moment needs to be consciously serving something bigger and more important. The best conversations of your life were those that had no agenda whatsoever. The best encounters were those that happened completely by chance, when you weren't looking for or expecting them. The best discoveries about yourself arose precisely when you weren't actively seeking self-knowledge or personal growth. This isn't coincidence. It's life functioning exactly the way it works best. Organically, naturally, spontaneously, without artificial pressure or calculated manipulation. Living with a sense of purposelessness means being constantly available for whatever appears on your path, without unnecessary resistance, without needing it to be different from what it is. It means not always trying to push life in the specific direction you think it should go. It means trusting that there's a much bigger, more subtle, and wiser intelligence than your conscious mind operating through absolutely everything, and that you can learn to collaborate gracefully with it instead of trying to direct the entire show by yourself. There's an indescribable lightness in not knowing exactly where you're going long-term. A constant and renewable adventure in being genuinely open to being surprised by life. A deep and lasting peace in trusting that life has its own vast and subtle wisdom, much more comprehensive than your limited personal plans. And this leads us directly to questioning a very common and rarely examined compulsion in our time. The almost obsessive need to look for deep meaning, transcendental significance, and edifying lessons in absolutely everything that happens to us. To automatically transform every experience into an opportunity for personal growth. To find a cosmic message in every situation. To always be learning, always be evolving, always be extracting applicable wisdom from every lived moment. Of course, growing, learning, and evolving are natural and beautiful aspects of conscious human experience. But when this becomes an unconscious compulsion, when you literally can't simply live an experience without trying to immediately decipher its deep meaning or its relevant life lesson, something precious and important is completely lost. You distance yourself from the direct, immediate, sensorial, and emotional experience of real life. You lose intimate contact with the richness of the present moment because you're always mentally busy trying to transform it into something else, into symbol, into metaphor, into lesson, into material for personal growth. Sometimes, and this might sound almost heretical in a culture completely obsessed with personal growth and spiritual development, a stone is simply a stone. A bird singing is simply a bird singing. Rain falling is simply rain falling. And it's perfectly, completely, wonderfully fine that way. You don't need to find a deep metaphor about persistence, a lesson about freedom, a symbolic connection with your spiritual development. Sometimes, all the richness and beauty are precisely in letting things be exactly what they are, without needing to mentally transform them into representations of something else. Life is not a giant classroom where absolutely everything is didactic material patiently waiting to be decoded by your analytical mind. Sometimes, many times, it's just life happening in all its direct simplicity, its natural complexity, and its inherent mystery. And there's a deep, almost sacred peace in accepting this completely. In allowing some experiences to be just experiences. In letting some moments be just moments, without the weight of needing to carry transcendental meaning or utility for your personal growth project. Observe nature functioning around you. It has no strategic plan whatsoever. And even so, it operates infinitely more harmoniously, beautifully, and efficiently than any system created by the human mind with its conscious intentions and objectives. Ocean waves aren't trying to get to some specific place or fulfill some movement goal. They simply rise and fall, in an eternal rhythm that has no objective beyond the rhythm itself, the dance itself with gravity and wind. Birds don't sing because they consciously want to transmit a deep message about the joy of living or the beauty of existence. They sing because singing is simply an integral part of their nature, as natural and automatic as breathing. Nature simply is, without needing to justify its existence, without needing to prove its value, without needing to achieve growth or optimization goals established by external systems. You're also part of this same intelligent and self-organizing nature. The same mysterious force that makes plants instinctively turn toward the sun also operates constantly in the same organic intelligence that coordinates the seasons, also coordinates the natural cycles of your life. This means you can also exist without needing to constantly justify each moment with a grandiose, "what for?" You can trust that your life has its own inherent and self-guiding wisdom, even when you don't consciously understand what it is or where it's leading. Alan Watts used to ask a provocative question that most people carefully avoid. Why survive? And it's crucial to clarify that he wasn't talking about self-destructive thoughts, but about a courageous reflection on the difference between being genuinely alive and just continuing to breathe on autopilot. Many people live essentially like sophisticated biological robots. They wake up because the alarm went off. They work because they need to pay bills. They eat because they feel hungry. They watch television because they're tired. They sleep because the body asks for rest. It's a form of survival, but is it really a conscious form of living? Without regular and honest reflection, survival easily becomes a completely empty and automatic cycle that can repeat for decades, without ever touching the real richness of human experience. Being truly alive goes far beyond keeping the body functioning and fulfilling basic social obligations. It's about quality of presence, not quantity of time. Intensity and depth of experience, not accumulation of achievements. Genuine connection with yourself and with direct life, not performance for external audiences. The Japanese developed a beautiful concept that captures something our culture has almost completely lost. Yugen. It's a word that evokes the deep enchantment of not knowing exactly what's going to happen. The specific beauty of mystery, of the unexplained, of what's always revealing itself, but never reveals itself completely. Yugen is the feeling you have when you're walking without particular destination, and suddenly see something, a specific combination of light and shadow, a movement of leaves, an expression on a stranger's face that stops your heart and awakens a sense of wonder that you can't even translate into words. Our culture has systematically trained us to fear the unknown, to always want to know what comes next, to plan and control every possible variable. But there's immense, almost magical beauty in genuinely not knowing, an indescribable lightness in being open to being surprised. When was the last time you allowed yourself to get lost? Literally or metaphorically? There's something deeply comforting in accepting that you don't need to have all the answers, all the plans, all the justifications to be on the right path. Alan Watts created one of the most elegant and liberating analogies about this. Music has no specific objective, and that's exactly what makes it wonderful. When you're listening to a symphony, you don't get impatient for it to end quickly. The beauty is in the very unfolding moment by moment of the musical experience. Life can be approached exactly like this, as an experience that's worthwhile for itself, moment by moment, not just for where it's going to take you in the future. Each moment can have intrinsic value, not just as a step towards something supposedly better. We're culturally obsessed with final results. We've almost completely lost the ability to appreciate processes. Imagine approaching your life like music you're improvising moment by moment, responding creatively to what emerges, without fixed script. Life is fundamentally temporal art. It happens in time, and each moment is absolutely unique and unrepeatable. You can't go back to improve what's past. You can only be present to what happens now. There's immense relief in accepting this completely, in stopping trying to control life like a project with a delivery deadline, in living it as organic experience that unfolds naturally. Many people have carried since childhood the belief that there's a specific, divine purpose for their life. But this purpose is never clearly explained by anyone. Alan Watts questioned, if there's divine purpose for each person, why is it always so obscure? Why does it require so much anguished suffering to be discovered? What if there's no specific purpose waiting to be found like hidden treasure? What if life is more like a vast garden where thousands of flowers can grow, each valuable in its own unique way? The potentially liberating truth: you can live a deeply meaningful life without a specific mission carved in stone. You can contribute in unique ways without a divine calling revealed in a vision. Maybe the true purpose is much simpler and more accessible. Being present to the life that happens now. Being genuine. Loving as you can. The present doesn't need cosmic justification. Your existence doesn't need a grandiose mission to have value. Living is fundamentally about letting go. Having the courage to trust yourself in the natural flow of life, even when you don't completely understand where you're going. Genuinely trusting is perhaps the most radical act in a culture that teaches systematic distrust. This trust doesn't eliminate risks, but frees you from the exhausting prison of obsessive control. It allows you to live with lightness, spontaneity, openness to the surprises that life wants to offer. When you truly trust, you stop wasting energy trying to control the uncontrollable. All that energy can be redirected to actually living, being present, genuinely connecting with what matters. Letting go is not passively giving up. It's stopping fighting unnecessarily against the current and learning to swim harmoniously with it. It's collaborating with forces that already operate, instead of trying to dominate them through pure willpower. If you've made it this far, maybe it's because you're genuinely tired of living like an efficient but soulless machine. Because you feel there's a lighter, more authentically satisfying way of being alive. This entire conversation is a gentle invitation to experiment, to consciously allow yourself regular moments of uselessness, to trust a little more in the organic flow of life, to gradually release some unnecessary controls and discover what happens when you allow life to be life. If these reflections touched, awakened, or comforted something within you, know that there's much more to be explored in this journey of reconnecting with the essential. In the exclusive ebook, Alchemy and Archetypes, you'll find practical exercises that can help you in this process. Check it out in the first pinned comment. And if you feel these ideas can help other people who are also tired of living just to be useful, who also feel this silent restlessness that something important is missing, share this conversation. Your like and subscription are practical ways to ensure these reflections continue reaching people who really need to hear them. Because sometimes, the most revolutionarily useful thing you can do is learn completely the art of being useless.